Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Ezekiel 48. We complete the book of Ezekiel today and we start an entire new book, that of Daniel. Now, I am away on leave at this beautiful place down at the coast. You can see for miles out there across the Indian Ocean, and a beautiful place to talk about what God is going to create in the future. Now, whether you see Ezekiel's vision as being Christ's millennial kingdom, whether you see it as part of the new heaven and new earth, doesn't really matter. He's describing what God is going to do in the future. And so he talks about the land allotted to his people. He talks about the gates that mark out the city, entering into the city in Jerusalem. But the most important thing, I think, in this chapter, as we wrap up the book, is the name. The name written across Jerusalem is Jehovah Shammah, which means the Lord is there, Jesus is there, God is there, God among his people. That's always been God's plan since the Garden of Eden, that mankind live with God. And that's how Ezekiel wraps up his prophecy, that there will be a time where God is among his people, where sin no longer has dominion, where man's mess up no longer characterizes how we live, but God is among his people. That's what we've got to look forward to. Now, the book of Daniel is a fascinating book. Remember, he's also one of the prophets that prophesied the time during the Babylonian invasion. Now, once the Babylonians had come, this book is set after the first wave of Babylonian invasions. So, left in Jerusalem was Jeremiah. Remember, Jeremiah was prophesying from Jerusalem. Ezekiel was prophesying from a refugee camp there in Babylon. Now, Daniel and his friends, who are later more known by their Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were among the royalty that were taken off into captivity. And they were sort of like put into Nebuchadnezzar's university. They were to be trained for 3 years, fed the correct foods, indoctrinated actually, brainwashed actually, in the ways of the Babylonians. And then they were to enter his service because they were intelligent, they were respectable, they were impressive young men. Anyway, the book is sort of put into a couple of categories. The first 6 verses tell us the stories about Daniel and his friends and their struggles in Babylon. From verse 7 through chapter 12, we see Daniel's prophecies, his visions of the future. But it's not quite as simple as that, because there's a language difference in this book. The first chapter kicks off in Hebrew. Then from chapter 2 through to chapter 7, it changes language in the original to Aramaic, which is like a sister language to Hebrew, which was spoken widely among the ancient world. And then from chapter 8 through to the end again, it is back to Hebrew. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us very certainly that chapter 2 and chapter 7, the two sides that hold the Aramaic language, those are very important chapters to interpreting the rest of the book. Anyway, let's dive right in. Daniel gets taken into Babylon and he gets put into this university, the school of Babylon. And he is compelled, together with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to abide by Babylonian rules, their food customs, etc. And so Daniel goes to the guy overseeing them and says, look, please don't let us do that. Please don't let us defy our bodies and our minds this way. So somehow he gets favor and he makes his stand for God. And the result is, after this training period, that they get promoted. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get promoted in the Babylonian kingdom. And it's a great way to start the book, actually, standing for your faith. I can remember raising my children. I've got a grandkid now, but when my children were at school and they had to stand for their faith, there's great pressure to comply, isn't there, for young children? And these young men, great pressure to comply. But when you stand and you rest, as Proverbs says, in the fact that promotion doesn't come from the east or the west, but it comes from the Lord, God has a way of backing those who stand for him. That's our encouragement today, is when the world is going crazy. Stand for him. He'll back you.